Welcome to the Ezekiel Bible. Um, Here we are. I'm Dawnita with Prairie Dust Trail. This is Emmie with the Manor Manor and Catherine, Keeper of Dragons, CatherineJFogelman.com. So, anyway, we are on Ezekiel chapter 7. Let's see if I can get it up here on the screen. All right. Whoever wants to read this time.
Shall I go for it? Okay. Moreover, the word of Jehovah came to me, saying, And you, son of man, thus says Adonai Jehovah to the land of Israel, an end. The end is coming on the four corners of the land. Now the end is upon you, and I will send my anger against you. I will judge you according to your ways and bring all your abominations upon you. For my eye will have no pity on you, nor will I spare you. But I will bring your ways upon you, and your abominations will be among you. Then you will know that I am Jehovah. Thus says Adonai Jehovah, a disaster, unique disaster. Behold, it is coming. And an end is coming. The end has come. It has awakened against you. Behold, it has come. Your doom has come to you, O inhabitant of the land. The time has come. The day is near. Tumult rather than joyful shouting on the mountains. Now I will shortly pour out my wrath on you and spend my anger against you. Judge you according to your ways and bring on you all your abominations. My eye will show no pity, nor will I spare. I will repay you according to your ways while your abominations are in your midst. Then you will know that I, Jehovah, do the smiting. Behold the day, behold it is coming. Your doom has gone forth. The rod has budded, arrogance has blossomed. Violence has grown into a rod of wickedness. None of them shall remain. None of their people, none of their wealth, nor anything eminent among them. The time has come, the day has arrived. Let not the buyer rejoice, nor the seller mourn, for wrath is against all their multitude. Indeed, the seller will not regain what he has sold as long as they both live, for the vision regarding all their multitude will not be averted, nor will any of them maintain his life by his iniquity. They have blown the trumpet and made everything ready, but no one is going to the battle, for my wrath is against all their multitude. The sword is outside, and the plague and the famine are within. He who is in the field will die by the sword, famine, and the plague will also consume those in the city. Even when their survivors escape, they will be on the mountains like doves of the valley, all of them mourning, each over his own iniquity. All hands will hang limp, and all knees will become like water. They will gird themselves with sackcloth, and shuddering will overwhelm them. And shame will be on all faces, and baldness on all their heads. They will fling their silver into the streets, and their gold will become an abhorrent thing. Their silver and their gold will not be able to deliver them in the day of the wrath of Jehovah. They cannot satisfy their appetite, nor can they fill their stomachs, for their iniquity has become an occasion of stumbling. They transformed the beauty of his ornaments into pride, and they made the images of their abominations and their detestable things with it. Therefore I will make it an abhorrent thing to them. I will give it into the hands of the foreigners as plunder, and to the wicked of the earth as spoil, and they will profane it. I will also turn my face from them, and they will profane my secret place. Then robbers will enter and profane it. Make the chain, for the land is full of bloody crimes, and the city is full of violence. Therefore I will bring the worst of the nations, and they will possess their houses. I will also make the pride of the strong ones cease, and their holy places will be profaned. Then, when anguish comes, they will seek peace, but there will be none. Disaster will come upon disaster, and rumor will be added to rumor. Then they will seek a vision from a prophet, but the law will be lost from the priest, and counsel from the elders. The king will mourn. The prince will be clothed in horror, and the hands of the people of the land will tremble. According to their conduct I will deal with them, and by their judgments I will judge them. and they will know that I am Yehovah. This is the word of the Lord.
Oh my goodness.
Ooh, so many thoughts.
There's a lot going on there. I was going to look up, there was this one place, okay, verse 22, where I can't, but in this one it said, I will also turn my face away from them, and they will profane my treasure. Then robbers will enter in prevalence. So I'm wondering what it actually says in Hebrew.
Yeah.
Look.
Because I don't have a note on that one.
Yeah, I'm going to pull that one up. Because I am curious.
You were looking at verse 22?
Yeah.
Yes.
What I was looking up on that is that was him basically saying the secret place is the Holy of Holies in the temple. At this point,
that's what I was thinking.
Jerusalem had not yet been destroyed.
Right.
There had been one siege against it, and a lot of Israelites had been taken into captivity, including Ezekiel himself. But Jerusalem was still standing, and there was still a king ruling there and stuff. So, and obviously the temple was still standing, which we see that in some of the earlier chapters. So what it seems he's saying here, his secret place that has been used a few times in the Bible up to this point to talk about the Holy of Holies. And if they're able to go in there and profane it, if he turns his face from them and they will profane my secret place, that means he's not in the secret place anymore. He is left.
Right. Now, the actual word is safen, and it means to hide or treasure up. Ambush, authority, conceal, hid, secret, restrain, saved, stealthy, watch. Because if we remember in Hebrew, the words don't just mean one thing. If they have different meanings, they tend to encompass it all.
Which word are you looking up?
It's
Safan or something?
For my secret place. I've got it up on the screen. Can you see it?
Yeah. Oh, my secret place.
My secret place, that word. And in mine it said, in the one that I was looking at, it said treasure. Yeah, it's this one word. Oops. Come on. Here we go. And yeah, it's translated different ways in the different scriptures.
It looks like it was used a lot for like hiding Moses in the little ark,
right?
Hiding the word in your heart,
storing treasures, treasured.
Yeah. Well, and it's also the root of the word, because if you go back to the word it actually is, it has like a different form ending on the end of it, and that means something in Hebrew, but don't ask me what.
This is saying it is the word. It's the root. Because
that's the roots. So
yeah,
like
it depends on what's
right.
added.
What's added to it. So and there's something added to it on on the other page.
Interesting that
it was like Sephanai or something.
Yeah, it's just interesting to me that it's calling it a place. In our translation, I'm going to see what it actually says in King James. 22 and 22. Oops. Let's see. Yeah, it says secret place in 22.
Secret place. Okay.
And the King James. So anyway, that was just something that I found interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. But I immediately thought what Catherine said is that, he's left the Holy of Holies.
Yeah. God has left the building.
He's gone. Yes.
The eagle has left the building, right?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I did a little bit of research on this earlier this
You
morning.
did your homework? Oh my goodness.
I know.
I feel so called out.
So, yeah, I did some homework on it, and you see later, I'm trying to remember which chapter now, but you see later, he shows Ezekiel, like there's a year gap between him talking to him in earlier Ezekiel and then later. So there's a year where he kind of goes silent. But then whenever he talks again, Ezekiel sees a vision.
Laying on his side and
right.
Yeah. Cooking his food on the food.
Ezekiel sees a vision of basically God's mercy seat picking up from the secret place in the temple and moving toward Babylon. And that really struck me. And of course, we'll see that later. But that struck me that, like, right now in this chapter, he's talking about the end has come, destruction is coming. You guys have sinned beyond repair at this point. You're just going to trip and fall on your face. And these wicked men are going to come in and they're going to even destroy my temple and come in and loot and plunder my holy place because I'm not there. Right. And for the people at the time, that's like the worst news you could get, right. That God's not there. But then it floored me how he's not there, but then Ezekiel sees a vision of the reason he wasn't there is because he picked up and he went to Babylon with his people.
Well, and we see that definitely with Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He's there with them, with some of the children that were taken. And they no longer see the ark after this happens, because the priests used a lever system to hide the ark underneath the temple. So, and that was not found again until, I believe Ron Wyatt's story on that. So the actual Ark of the Covenant wasn't found until Ron Wyatt found it. Yeah.
And I believe God's presence has not been on the Ark of the Covenant since this chapter.
No. And if you haven't read or listened to Ron Wyatt's story, and I don't know exactly how this works or anything, but it was in, it was well protected, but it was right under where Yeshua was crucified. And when the rocks were split during the crucifixion, then that blood went down and sprinkled on the Ark of the Covenant. That was like the last sacrifice that we needed. And Ron Wyatt supposedly had some of the blood tested. And so, that's just amazing. But yeah, he took it away from him. It's like, you may rebuild the temple later, but you're not going to have this again. My seat will not be there with you anymore.
Right. But what floored me though, so he's got this, he's painting all of this doom and gloom, and then they're going to come in and they're going to destroy my secret place, and I'm going to let it happen because guess what? I'm not there anymore. Right. And for the Jew, that's devastating. But then you see the picture later. I'm not there because I'm exiling myself with you.
With you.
I am with you.
Yeah.
Even though you messed up and I'm going to let you fall and scrape your nose, I'm heading out with you.
Yeah, and we can see that with the Esther story and, all of that in there, and the things that God did, amazing things that he did in Babylon and Persia with the people. So yeah.
And I think as Christians, we have a very different view of God than the Hebrew did, definitely back then and even today. They didn't have the Holy Spirit then. God was where God was at, basically. doesn't mean that he wasn't all powerful, all knowing, and everywhere. But his spirit would only work through a few people at that time until the ultimate sacrifice was made to open up that way for the Holy Spirit to work in everyone all around the world. Mm-hmm. So the Jews, whenever they were reading this, it made it so much more personal than I think a lot of Christians understand, because we're like, well, I have God in me. Whereas the Jew is like, I didn't have God in me.
Yeah.
That wasn't a thing.
And it wasn't like an idol that you could just pick up and take with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like, how can I do this now? You know, I've had this specific way that I've done this, and that I've talked to God, and, you know, like Hannah going up to the temple and pouring her heart out to the Lord. The Hannahs, after the temple is destroyed, what are they going to do?
And that's what, in the old world, your God was wherever your God sat at, basically. And the Jews had a unique view of God from many other cultures. And
I think a lot of people do still have that view, whether they realize it or not, because a lot of people feel like they need to be in a church. And I will give especially an old cathedral or one of the older churches, there's something different about that, and you can really feel closer to God on holy ground. Let's say, you know, if you've got something that is holy ground, the Native Americans even had holy ground.
Yeah,
you know. So there are some places that you feel closer to God. I think that's why I like it here. Not necessarily because as much of the people and the politics and stuff out here are very annoying, but I can just go out, and sometimes I crave going out barefoot and sinking my toes into the dirt, and just, it's kind of like the Anne of Green Gables. If I was going to say a prayer, I would go out into the biggest field and I would just feel the prayer, you know. And Marilla was like, oh, she's such a heathen. But I think there's just some places that you can feel that. If that makes
Absolutely.
sense. But we shouldn't rely on that, because God isn't a touchy-feely, you know. He's told people throughout time, you know, take off your shoes, this is holy ground type of things. We know it's a thing, and we know that there can be something special about a building or a place and stuff like that. So I'm not going to downplay it, but you don't have to be in those places anymore.
And that was the thing, like, I think it's kind of lost on a lot of, you know, Christians, true believers and stuff, is that, you know, we know we can worship God in our apartment and he is there with us. Whereas for the Israelite, definitely in the time of Ezekiel, that was not a reality. And they got this prophecy from Ezekiel and was like, oh snap, God lets his holy place get plundered. That means he's not there. And then it all comes to pass, of course. And then he goes silent for like a year. And everybody's like, well, he's done with us. But then he comes back later and is like, no, I've been working. And here's the vision. I went with you into exile. So, you know,
I think another thing that we don't...
into, like, how you... and the chapter before showed where you guys have desecrated all of this. The wicked men that came and plundered everything didn't. You guys desecrated and pushed me out. And then I chose to go into exile with you.
I think we don't
You're still my people.
also really comprehend the nationality piece of it, and how, you know, Israel being the little country that it has basically always been in the world, getting everything taken away from them and getting carried out. You know, that's big. Here in America, while we will fight about our nationality and our patriotism and all of that kind of stuff, we're not afraid of losing it. You know, if somebody would say, okay, we're taking all of you all out, we're taking over, there is not going to be a United States of America anymore. What would that feel like for us? I mean, not to mention you wouldn't have churches to go to, or, you know, but what would that be? It would be big. I mean, even people who go as missionaries or whatever into other countries and stuff, and we have an exodus of people that are moving out of our country. But I feel like they know they could always come back. You know?
Right. It's not that man without a country thing.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't like it here anymore, and leave.
I don't blame them in some instances.
Some cases.
Oh my goodness.
This point is kind of pick your poison. Oh my goodness. Well, I think it's so much that we take. To both points, we take so much for granted, right? I've seen that so much, especially with Holy Spirit. When you talk to people, like, and it's like they don't even think about Holy Spirit being in them, with them. And then, as you said, like, just taking our place, like where we live, for granted too. Like, we all do that. So, and we don't. And that's why we read. So many will read over something like this, and it's just like, oh, well, that stinks. You know, that happened to them. You know, not a okay, but what does it really mean? As you were pointing out, that like, oh, God left that particular place, but He went with them, because we always have God with us. And we just need to, it's one of those things, reminding myself, like, not to take that for granted. Like, Holy Spirit is with me, in me, walking with me, like, I'm walking with Him, like, you know, like.
Yeah. Even whenever the world around us is crumbling and we're being put into exile, basically, He is picking up His mercy seat and moving with us. And that was really, like, overwhelming this morning, that picture of, I've left the holy place. You have caused this. I have left the holy place. But then a year later, look, just because I left the holy place and gave you guys up to do what you wanted to do, doesn't mean that I'm not with you. I followed you. I went with you to Babylon.
Yeah.
That was, like, powerful there. It's like, what other God does that? Whenever their people get punished and destroyed, what other God is like, okay, well, I'm in this with you. Let's go. It just...
Yeah. No, they're just like...
Yeah. And we shouldn't take it for granted, because this has happened more than once. You know, in 70 AD, it happened again. And it took, you know, however long in between 70 AD and 1940, whatever, you know, that they basically weren't there. So, I mean, it's like, second time around, it was even worse. And then the ones in control now, I don't, are they better than the Herodians or not? That's maybe a debate for another day.
I thought it was interesting, verses 23 through 27. He basically is kind of repeating the beginning of the prophecy, but then, like, he's going through showing this, like, this cycle that has happened, and it's a cycle that we can see in even our own personal lives, much less our own, you know, our own country or other countries around the world, but you can see this in your own personal life. And It just, whenever you allow crimes and violence to happen, then, here, the worst of nations are going to come in and possess your house. And then your pride is going to cease, and your holy places will be profaned, and you'll feel anguish, and you will seek peace, but there's not going to be any. And it's just disaster after disaster and rumor after rumor, and you seek help, but nobody can help you. And I thought that was pretty, profound there too. That it's like, man, humans really haven't changed that much, have we? And it's not, I mean, in a way, yes, it is God not necessarily bringing these things, but allowing these things to happen because, I tried to help you guys. I told you guys the right way to go, and you've instead made these choices that have started spinning this wheel, and now I'm just going to let you do it. Just like the toddler on don't get on the chair. Don't get on the chair. You're going to tip the chair over. You're going to tip. You know what? Okay, tip the chair over. See, I told you. And it just, you got to let them experience what they started and let it come to pass.
When a lot of times that's not as bad a punishment as what would have happened if this consequence, it's one consequence or another. And sometimes it's like, well, you either have this immediate consequence of you're going to be overthrown or you're going to throw the chair over. Later on, what the consequence might be for the same stubborn, hard-headed willfulness,
Yeah. And I thought it was interesting before in verse 19 too, where he's like, well, largely verse 19, but they've spent all this time accumulating silver and gold, and then this horrible day is going to come to pass, and that's going to be the last thing they want on them, and they're literally throwing it into the streets. But it ends up not being able to do anything for them. They dress like beggars, they shave their heads, they get rid of their silver and gold, and try to be less of a target.
Yeah.
But it doesn't stop the consequences of their actions from coming down on their heads.
Yeah. And I think we can think of that in terms of prepping. A lot of people want to invest in silver or gold today or Bitcoin or whatever. And it's like things come down to the wire and it starts hitting the fan. You can't eat that. And the more, monetary possessions or wealth that you seem to have, the more you are going to be a target.
You're going to be a target, exactly.
So, I'm not telling you to do things the way I do things, but, looking like you're poor white trash on my end of it doesn't bother me a bit. I will just sit here and look like, I'm not storing up earthly wealth anyway, so I don't know that we've got anything that anybody would want. But, I've asked Paul whenever I go on a trip away from him and stuff, should I wear my wedding ring? And he's like, I think somebody just soon cut your finger off than, try to. So I often don't. I'll maybe put on a, just a plain silver band or something. But those are things to think about as well. Is,
and he's done a good job in verses, basically verses 14 through 19, setting up that you guys have been trying to use material possessions to fill your spiritual needs.
Mm-hmm.
And now those are a stumbling block for you. And I can't, even think of how many people I have seen do that. My husband's ex-wife is a really, really good example of that right now, where it's just like she's kind of given up, it seems, on God, and is now just focused on material possessions, bigger paycheck, better cars, bigger house, new furniture, all of this stuff. And that's not what she's needing. But the more she suffers, the more she is out there just turning the wheel to crank in more money and get more things and make life just try to take these material possessions to make my life not suffer as bad as I feel like I'm suffering. Mm-hmm. When her true suffering has nothing to do with her material possessions. It's her spiritual possessions, or lack thereof.
Yeah.
But we don't like investing in our spiritual possessions because that forces us to take extreme ownership of everything in our life.
Yeah.
Every choice we make.
And you should have really hammered that in whenever he said, a rich man has a harder time entering the kingdom of heaven than a camel going through the eye of a needle.
Mm-hmm.
And invest in the kingdom of heaven. He was constantly saying,
Yeah. And I saw a really great little short Bible study on that recently. That it was talking about not just a rich man with material possessions, but also a poor man with all of the basic comforts he needs or wants. Mm-hmm. Both are in danger because one is rich with material possessions and then the other is rich with comfort. So they're both in danger of having a harder time getting into the kingdom of heaven because they're comfortable. Why would they change that up? So I found it to be a really good warning across the board. And mm-hmm. the whole thing with your spiritual walk is that you're really never supposed to be comfortable or at rest. Mm-hmm. I think until you're about to die. That's about been the only time I've seen like true spiritual warriors just kind of finally be at peace with themselves is when they're ready to go on. It's like, well, I've done all I can do. So, and again, that's why humans just dislike a lot of our spiritual walk because it's not about comfort.
Right. But there's a balance too between contentment and comfort.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of like, just running your home and your household and your children. You have to be consistent, but you need to be flexible too. And they seem like opposites, but they're not. They're very complementary and work together very well. If you are consistent, you can be more flexible, and it's the same way with the contentment and the comfort. As far as that part is concerned, is the more content you are, the more you have the ability to strive for the kingdom.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. A good example I can think of that is that a comfortable person, I have helped clean houses for lots of comfortable people. Hoarders. They were hoarders. But they were very comfortable in their house, in their hoard, in their mess. And they didn't get help until basically somebody else became uncomfortable with that. Generally not their discomfort. Unless, something happened, there was enough pain in their life to where they were no longer comfortable in that situation. But, it's just the comfort. A comfortable person is never going to upgrade their life. Whereas a content person, I've been in lots of content homes, and they're always yeah, we're doing the bathroom next month. So we were just going to do these 1, 2, 3 little upgrades or something like that. We've been saving for it. And they're not unhappy with their house. They're very content, but they're not allowing themselves to necessarily be comfortable with where it's at. And basically, if you're not improving, then you're not staying stagnant either. You're degrading. So having that, don't be comfortable in this degradation because you are going to degrade, but be content where you're at and keep pressing onward.
Yeah. You're always moving.
We're a bunch of blabbermouths. It's your turn, Emmie.
My turn? What do you want me to say? Actually, what was coming up for me is like the difference between like joy and happiness. That's all I was thinking about too, because like, you know, joy is the fruit of the spirit, and then you know, happiness is that feeling that comes and goes. But it's like the more you have joy, the more easy it is to even seem or even be happy in situations that are not great, but or what would seem not great to the outside world. But I've been thinking about Jim and I are actually having a conversation about this morning of just like, I've been reading A Chance to Die, which is a biography about Amy Carmichael. That book is, read it. I'm just going to put that out there.
Yeah, read it.
Read it.
Very good.
And I just read about where she was like talking about making soldiers. And I just told Jim, I was like, okay, I need you to go remember what in military school was good, so we can take those aspects out and like add that in, because we've reached that point where there's almost too much contentment with like the children and stuff, and it's like, okay, what is next? So how do we, and making soldiers, especially looking at what's going on in the world, I'm like, because these boys, I mean, they're still young. Okay, I have young boys, not like old, you know, I don't have like grown ones, but I'm like, these boys need to be able to stand up and fight. I don't know if I were in a situation that I could count on them and you weren't there, like Jim wasn't there to do something. And it's not like anything in particular, but it's just the way I was trained, the way Jim was trained, the way our generation was trained, and it's just we're like, okay, we need to learn the next thing. Like, we need to be, and it's not one of those like every man has to be like this type of mentality, which is not a good thing either, but just like, you know, you need to be able to take care of your family. You need to be able to defend your family. You know, I can defend my family if I need to, but I can only go so far. I'm a short woman. I need my boys, you know, and like I said, they're still young. They're not, you know, they're not
right,
grown men yet, but I'm like, but they're in that, like, we're starting to get that training ground where they need to like be able to, and so I'm like, all right, so what does that look like? How do we move, you know, full sergeant?
Yeah, we have a whole a lot of young men in the last 2 generations for sure that are way too comfortable, and I can't tell you how many men I've seen that soon as they get the girl and get the house and get the car, they're just gonna kick up their feet and crack a beer open and watch TV. They got everything. Why would they need to do anything else? You know, why would they need to keep wooing her? Why would they need to improve their house when they own it? They'll get around to it eventually. Stop nagging me, woman. You know, and so we have too many men who are just comfortable with letting life move on by them and teaching them to be happy where they're at, but then recognize that if you're not improving, you're declining. And if you're not building your wall, it's falling down. If you're not repairing your battlements or making them stronger, they're falling into disrepair and decay. And it's just whether that's, you know, real life or your spiritual life or your emotional life, you know, it is constant. You've got to constantly be communicating, constantly be working, and just and including your people too. So it's just, we've got a very, very sad generation of men who don't know what their life purpose is and are depressed, but then they're just going to go play out their depression on a video game because at least they have a goal and purpose.
Yeah, and I think you hit that on the head. It's the purpose, right? And I mean, our society has done a masterful job of teaching men that they don't have a purpose, and it's sad.
It's a very
disturbing.
We're seeing a lot of consequences coming from that now.
And so, yeah, and I mean, even as believers, there's so much that we're having to like unlearn. Like even now at 40 years old, I'm starting to see things. I'm like, oh, we were taught that by the society to think this way and this way, but that's really not the right way to think. And we're having to, I mean, and it is hard because like right now God is just going like boom, 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 boom. He's just like throwing all the rocks at us, like just right. Like you need to change this and you need to change that, and it's like okay. Right. And it's that whole, because I mean the biggest part of it is we are not trained to do hard work. We were trained to be obedient servants, slaves, if you will. Like that's what we were essentially trained to do.
I don't know that it was obedient, but educated slaves. Educated.
Okay, fine.
Because if you think about obedience, I mean, none of the servants, slaves, workers in America, very, very few are interested in going the extra mile or, really doing a good job, really taking pride in it.
That is everywhere right now. And I mean, and we see I'm seeing this with so many kids right now, that parents just want them to just do what I say, don't do what I do what I say, make good grades, be the good little child in the corner over there, don't ask questions, don't make my life harder than it needs to be, and just do what I say to do. And then they're wondering why their kids are becoming adults and not doing anything. And it's like, well, you raised the perfectly compliant little drone worker. What did you expect?
Yeah.
So teaching our kids to, that there's some days I can't handle it. I am at my wit's end right now. I can't handle any more questions. Please go write those questions down or ask me at another time. Or like with Whitney, I'll go turn on the phone, the recorder on the phone. I'm like, you can ask all your questions right here and I will get to them later because I can't right now. But teaching them that it's okay, ask the questions, change up your environment, do what you need to do, kids are always learning and absorbing and doing things differently and being outside the box. And us overwhelmed parents, especially in this society where we can't live on a one-income household, most of us, it's overwhelming to constantly have that, and you just desperately want the little puppet to sit in the corner and just do what they're told. And you'll eventually get around to telling them how to properly live their life when you don't have any idea either. So that's really hypocritical of you.
But that's it. That is, I keep having these, like Jim, I keep having these discussions because it's like, what is going on? Like, because it's like, it's what you just said, because we're starting to realize we were never taught how to live. We were taught how this is all you need. Your education is all you need until you have a family and children and you're like, okay. And then you're trying to remember what they did and you're wanting to do differently. And you're like, okay, so what does that mean? And there's no one to help you because we're all trying to learn it at the same time together. And so we're just like bumping along. And then we end up doing the do as I say, not as I do, because we're so frustrated that we're just like,
right. Right.
And you need to stop going, that's like in our house right now. It's like, all right, we've got to stop the yelling, unnecessary yelling. I'm going to put it that way because sometimes yelling is necessary. But we've got to stop the unnecessary yelling. Like, this is just getting, like, because it's, yesterday we were all, I don't know what happened, but we were just like, we were all ready to fight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Too much noise. Yes. Yeah. Yep. And I think that's where I see definitely a lot of conservative parents, Christian parents. I think I see them tend to fall into that a lot harder than like very liberal parents, because it's just they are too scared. It's scary to think that your child may think differently than you, and that they don't make the right choice. And so many of those parents will just get into this lock of, we're doing it because I said so. And, you know, instead of getting into, okay, here's why we do it. What are you thinking? Why do you want to try it differently? Or, you know, have you heard of other ways? Or even going into, like, I will go in with our boys and, you know, we'll have conversations. One of them a while back brought up stuff that he had learned about climate change at school. And I was like, oh, hi, I live in the perfect area to tell you all about climate change. And so tell me more about this. And it's like, you know, and so he tells me what he learned. And I'm like, you know, of course, none of it was factual. But instead of just being like, those liberal teachers, blah, 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 instead of doing that slap down, I go, okay, well, let's look at this stuff. You know, let's look at the agricultural side of it. Let's look at the oil industry side of it, because I live in the hub of both. And let's look at how this, and just looking at it and then going, okay, here's what your side, you know, their side is saying, or whatever. That's what the other side is saying. Here's what this side is saying. And let's look at it. And he was able to see where both sides were flawed on one area or the other on certain things. And then realize that he came to the conclusion, he's like, they're just trying to scare me, aren't they? I'm like, good job. That's it. And, you know, giving him all of the options without telling him necessarily, well, I believe this, and we're not going to talk about that in my house. I didn't even go into what I believe. I was like, okay, let's pull up Google and let's go on the search. And here's some stuff that I've learned. Here's what I've seen whenever I've worked out in the field and stuff. And how does that align with what they taught you? And letting him turn on his brain and use it for thinking himself, and then come to his own conclusion.
Turn on the brain. I love that, because it's like that in Understood Betsy. We just finished that book together as a read aloud, and it talks about her turning on her brain, and that's what you want to do.
I got that yelled at me a lot. Just turn on your brain. It's like, it is. I don't know what's going on.
Oh, lovely. Up with the Gen X mom, huh? You know, my thing was just trying to get you guys to think through things as much yourself as possible. And admittedly, we all have times that it's just like, tell me what to do because I'm tired of thinking. You know, my brain's tired. Tell me what to do.
That happens more when you're a grown adult.
I think it does. I think it has more. You know, there were times that I like, you know, chores that needed to be done, and I would make a list or do up some cards and say, okay, this is what needs to be done. How do you guys suggest, you know, that how are we going to do this so that we can get all of this done? And whether it was each of them picking a couple of cards that they were going to do daily, or saying, hey, it would be better if we could do these things in the mornings and these things once a week, or whatever, you know, each person taking one day a week for dishes or something like that, and trying to work it out together and helping them think, okay, these are the things that need to be done for our home to be comfortable, you know, and for us to be comfortable with visitors coming to visit. So what do we need to do so that we're ready for visitors and that we can do this? And, you know, getting them in the conversation helps sometimes.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, we did that recently where I was like, okay, what is your preferred general, like, for the household? And, like, half of them all wanted the same thing, and I was like, well, that's not gonna work. So, that's why we rotate, because it's just like, yeah. And right now we're doing like month-long rotations instead of a week rotation, which has been helping, because the problem is by the time they finally get it, then it's like time to switch again.
Time to switch over, right?
So I'm just like, right now, I'm just doing what I can. And like, we had another discussion yesterday, because I have a list of all things. I'm like, and it's not even something that has to be done every day. It's just like, over the course of the week, like these things need to be done. Because if we do them, there isn't going to be that much cleaning to do. It's like, and it's getting them to realize that. That's the flipping on your brain part, is that like, if you keep doing a little bit, then you're going to grow. And I mean, like, it really goes into what we're talking about anyway. It's just like, is that growth, right? And obviously with my little bitties, like, they don't get it. They're just like, but I just want to play. And I'm like, well, yeah.
Until you're in the middle of something, and then they want to help.
Yes.
They look at help at most in our opportune time. There's glass all over the floor, and they want to help with it.
Yes. Well, the 2-year-old wants to do it all, but he doesn't have the finality for some of the fine motor skills. That's what I'm looking for. The fine motor skills for some of it. Some of it he does fine. Like he helps with the vacuum, and I can give him a rag and he can scrub a wall and stuff like that. But yeah, it's like, so it's like how it is trying to keep that up, and that's where like you go back and you see where we fell short in some areas, but it had to do with the situations at the time and all that, and just like I said, like weeding out where we've made mistakes, and then how to help them going forward. So it's not like you're not stuck, you're not stagnant, you're growing. And so that's the point.
Very incentive driven, and I think that's where I'm still really incentive driven. So I enjoy cleaning. I enjoy cleaning my house. I enjoy cleaning other people's houses, because I get such a dopamine rush from whenever I stand back and see a clean room. And, and then like teaching your kids how to really enjoy researching and learning and stuff. And the same can be done with like any chore. It's whenever they realize that they do get some sort of a dopamine benefit from it, then the brain will keep that up through the rest of the life.
How do you teach that though? Because it's like, so like my oldest, he's like me. He wants things in their place, and they better be in their place. But he only will do that for his own things. So he has 2 younger brothers in there, and he'll just leave all their stuff around. And I'm just like, dude, can you don't you realize that if you help them learn how to do this, then it'll be even better? And
that's where my meme mom kicks in, because anytime I had a situation like that, then for the next week or two, that child had to do nothing but clean up after the ones that didn't want to. That's like the child that is going to ask for the cookie first, or that's going to pick the biggest cookie or something. I have them pick out the biggest cookies for other people, for the others. So yeah, it's a mean mom.
Like that.
Yeah, it's
I have something like that. That's so much easier to do though.
Right.
than like the cleaning up.
Also, I mean, I found with Whitney again, and it kind of comes into there's some days I'm so exhausted, but if I will turn it into, especially with her being 4, the little ones just want to play. And if you turn it into a game of some sort, then like now I've worked with her long enough that whenever I'm like, it's time to clean up, she goes in her room at 4 years old, and, she has dumped all the toy boxes everywhere. And some days she'll be a little overwhelmed, but, I'll drop 4 boxes on the floor for her, and I'm like, all right, find all the horsies, and she'll have her little scenes on, she does, and she'll go find all of her little horsies and put in the box. And then she automatically gets into the system of, okay, I've found all of my horsies and put them up. Now I need to find all of my little people and put them up. And now all of these little things and all of my Barbies. And not to say she doesn't get distracted. I do too, still, when I clean my room. But, turning that into a fun experience, makes it easier for her brain to do it and her body to do it. It's not a chore anymore. It's a fun thing I'm doing. And then she has started, this is fairly recent, once it's all picked up and we put the boxes away, she's now standing in her room and going, so clean. And it's like getting the dopamine from that. I'm like, yes. So,
well, and that's where I would invite people over. Hey, let's have a party. The house gets deep cleaned. Everything gets cleaned because we're going to have a party and we're inviting friends over. All of the birthdays are in the worst heat of the summer or the coldest part of the winter when the roads are bad. So we can't do birthday parties. We usually can't because either we're going to have a blizzard or it's so hot it's miserable. So we would have parties at different times of the year and just family parties and invite people over and stuff. And that would help because if we've got people coming over to visit, then they would get much more excited about doing the cleaning and stuff. So if the house gets behind, plan a party. Well, and it worked for me too. I'd have a Longaberger party or a Pampered Chef party or something like that. It worked.
Again, the incentive.
Yeah.
It's not good to bribe your kids, but the brain works on incentives. That's why capitalism works. Sorry if there's any anti-capitalists listening to this.
I don't think most of the anti-capitalists even understand what capitalism really is.
Right.
That's a whole nother subject.
That's a whole nother video.
Yeah, that's a whole nother
subject. It's how the human brain works. The human brain loves having incentive, having a exciting reason to do the drudgery. And
if you think about it, when we do something bad, we have a consequence. When we do something good, we have a reward. That is natural cause and effect. So if you have something that you don't have a natural effect for, it's hard to it's just hard to acclimate that, I think it's one way or the other. It's either you're going to have an effect for whatever you do. Yeah, you got to have goals, right?
And in a larger family, it's a little harder because some kids, it sounds like your 2-year-old, his incentive is probably, I'm part of the team. Some human brains and little kids just want to be a part of the team. That is their dopamine right there. So they will pitch in and help as long as they're part of the team. And then
if the 6-month-old could, she would.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then those are the ones that you're going to have trouble later on when you need them to go in the kitchen and do something by themselves. Because I've had some that work very well in the kitchen by themselves. They don't want anybody else in the kitchen with them. And then I've got some that want a team in the kitchen with them. Yep. Mom, I'd like to, make some donuts. Would you come in and she doesn't necessarily need help. She knows how to do it by herself. She just wants company.
The team. Yes. The team feel.
I was going to say my oldest daughter is like that. And it gets even more tricky when I'm like, she's making her cakes. I call them her business cakes versus just for us or whatever. And I'm like, okay, y'all, this is a different situation. But if she's making stuff for us, I'm like, let them do stuff. Show them what you're doing. They're interested, because I don't have a clue. I'm like, you're going to have to teach me because I don't know. So yeah, it's just,
and sometimes they just need somebody to visit, and I've gone in and just pulled up a chair and propped my feet up and sat in the kitchen.
That's kind of how my husband is. And his youngest son is very money oriented. And of course, he just turned 13 this year. He's figured out he can go buy cool stuff with money, but he always has been very money oriented. And so it's like, I'm not bribing him, but I'll tell him, hey, if you want to earn $20, you can go mow the lawn before dad gets home. Or, I have $10 sitting in my purse. If you take out the trash in the cat box and sweep the floor afterward, I'll give you $10. And he is always Johnny on the spot to do that. And then the oldest is he wants a clean, peaceful environment. So it's one of those things that I can put him onto organization tasks. And, you know, can you organize the DVDs? Can you organize the books? Pick up the floor? You know, and he gets the dopamine from having that organized, seamless environment to be in.
Yeah.
So, and I'm
maybe that's what I need to start here.
So
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where going through the personality traits and children's personality traits and their love languages change as they grow. So I think it's a good idea to do that like every year to refresh that and see where they're at. And I think I know one of my subscribers is caring for an elderly parent. Elderly parents do the same thing. Their love languages and personality traits can change as they are growing older as well.
And it's something too. Kids have like tanks, little mini tanks for all of the love languages. Right. They have so many little love tanks, so it changes so frequently. As they get older, they start consolidating all of that into one or two.
Yeah. Into their preferences. Mm-hmm. But still, every once in a while, we all need all of the tanks filled. Mm-hmm. You know, even the one down on the bottom. So if you, you know, with my father-in-law, he loved clocks. He was a gift giver, but he didn't like to receive gifts usually, you know, and he liked quality time, acts of service, doing special things for him. But you had to kind of be undercover to do that, you know, so that he didn't think that you were helping him in any way. You know, you have to get creative with situations like that, whether it's children or, you know, our elder children. You have to get creative with how you're dealing with some of that stuff. We've gotten a little bit away from the Ezekiel chapter 7, but I think it does fit, because really what God was doing there was, and he calls the children of Israel for a reason. And that is very much how we are. We're spoiled, rotten brats most of the time. And if we think about it, you know, we have a lot of blessings that he gives us, but we get so stressed in the circumstances of the day that we lose sight of that. And, you know, it is part of our growth to realize where he is in our chaos. Hopefully that's a good wrap up. I'm trying to sound intelligent here. Oh my goodness.
Yes, that works. Yes, we are his children. There you go.
Yep.
Okay. Well, we've got an hour. Anything else in closing?
I just go back with that too, the Holy Spirit. Listen to Holy Spirit, praying, talking to, like, just keeping that communication with God open. Like, yeah.
Yeah, and really, give some special gratitude today for the fact that we don't have to worry about where the Ark of the Covenant is.
Yeah,
it is. It does not. We have him inside of us. We are the temple now. So that is an amazing blessing that we probably don't even understand how
we can't fully comprehend. It just, we know that Abraham and onwards like looked forward to that day, but we cannot fully comprehend.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, thank you girls for joining again. Make sure and visit them. Catherine has books that are a lot of fun, and Emmie has a book as well, but they've got some Bible studies stuff and helping. If you subscribe to her on social media, they're on TikTok and stuff now too. They do Bible study with their family. So if that's something that you struggle with, with their children and, join in with that. It's amazing thing. And of course, me and my silliness. If you're not in my community, come. Welcome. All right. We will see y'all next week.